Good morning and welcome to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33 WHPR Comcast 20 in Detroit. And we stream live at www.tv33whpr.com. And I am so excited today because my guest is from Atlanta, Georgia. Originally, of course, from the state of Michigan and the city of Grand Rapids. And she has done something that not a lot of historians have done. She has written a series of books, and it's going to be a series of 16 on the friends and cohorts of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I find this very, very interesting because Dr. King, of course, got the major press, and he was the one well known around the world, but nobody gets there by themselves, and he had wonderful people around him, very courageous people around him. And I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Miss Jacqueline James. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the Motor City,
Thank
Detroit, Motown.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited that Ricky Welch told me about you and everything. And you're in town to do what?
Well, I'm here. I have a book signing at Truth Bookstore Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock. And I spoke to a group of children at Brenda Scott Academy yesterday.
Oh, I knew Brenda Scott. She was such a wonderful woman and very good counsel person. And she was also my sorority sister. And she was just gone before, the good die young.
Yes.
That's what they say. Mm-hmm. And Jacqueline, you grew up in Grand Rapids,
yes,
right?
Yes, I did. I was born there and lived there over 30 years.
Over 30 years.
Yes.
So you, where did you go to college after you graduated from Grand Rapids?
Grand Rapids, Ottawa Hills High School.
Ottawa Hills.
And then I went to Michigan State. I got a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees from Michigan State University.
Okay, what were your master's in?
My elementary education was my bachelor's and my master's, and I had a degree in special education. And
oh, wow, that's nice. That's really nice. So you were really well-rounded.
Yes.
You're really well-rounded. So did you stay in Grand Rapids?
I did. I taught 5 years there. Then got married and moved to Lansing and stayed 5 years there.
Lansing.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I taught 5 years there. Then I moved to Maryland, where I was going to teach at Gallaudet College, the elementary school at Gallaudet for the deaf, but President Reagan defunded the school, so they couldn't hire any new teachers that year. So I did teach 2 years there before I relocated to
Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
Okay. So once you got to Atlanta, did you continue
yes, I
to
did.
teach?
I taught kindergarten for 12 more years. Then I taught 5th grade 1 year. Then I went into the library. I went to Georgia State and got a specialist degree in library media technology.
Wow.
So
amazing.
I was a media specialist for 7 years, and then I decided I needed to go back in the classroom. So I always had that special ed degree that I hadn't used, and they never had openings for deaf ed teachers, so I called and they had one. So I did my last 3 years teaching high school deaf and hearing impaired students.
I'm going to ask you, do you like high school or elementary?
Well, I love kindergarten, but I never thought I would like high school because I thought I was going to teach elementary deaf students. But I like them all.
Wow, I taught high school all those years, and I loved it. I loved it. A lot of people say, "Oh, I wouldn't do high school," but there's something about them, and you're that last bastion before they get out there in the world. So
what was good to me about that was I got them from the beginning in kindergarten, so I knew. And it always helped me. Teaching kindergarten helps you teach everything else that you have to teach.
I can imagine.
Yes.
I can imagine that to be so. Well, what made you decide? Well, were you always a writer?
Yes, I write letters for people who are in trouble. That's the kind of writing I usually do. People will call me, I need a letter. My boss said this, my principal said this, and so I did that. But I always
That's
wrote.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, people call me from all over the country to write letters for them to save their job, to save different, to get them in places. I'm a good letter writer now.
Wow. Do you still do that?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I do.
Hey, I may have to talk to you about that offline because
I edit term papers. I edit papers for people. I've been a writer, but I taught my students how to write. They always wrote books, little books and things in school, but as I grew older and everything, I saw that Black history was just disappearing. So
it was just disappearing, right? Well, I think about when you and I went to school. I don't know if your school was like mine, but they taught very little Black history, if
yes,
any.
it was. Yes.
Especially my school, it was, if any.
Yes, I understand. Yes, that's what happened at my school also.
So it's very important, of course. You know, as I started teaching in the 70s, that was more about Martin Luther King, Langston Hughes, and so forth and so on. But they didn't have anything on the supporters.
No.
Nothing on the supporters. And what we have here, we have 3 books that Miss Jacqueline James has edited, and a former student of hers, Lameek Wilson, he did the illustrations. They are beautiful books, and I'm going to talk about each one briefly, but and the importance. Now you have, and this is a very interesting story. You have Reverend C.T. Vivian. What made you decide to do his first? And this is like a biography, right?
Yes, they're
and
all
it's for what grades?
It's for 4th grade and up, all the way through high school. But I'm finding it's for adults also. There was an adult here this afternoon, and he said, this needs to be for adults too, because I don't know this history. So, but 4th through on up can read the book. 2nd, 3rd, 1st graders, teachers are reading it to the students and then discussing it with them. The vocabulary is too advanced for them, but they can understand it if the teacher reads it and discusses it with them.
And reads it, shows them illustrations, asks them what they think, because critical thinking is so important, as you know. Mm-hmm. So you have an interesting history with Reverend Vivian.
Yes, I do.
Why don't you tell our audience?
Okay, I don't know how many people know about the incident with Reverend C.T. Vivian in Alabama in 1965. It went all over, it went nationwide, as we would say today, viral. He was leading a voter registration drive, and he got to the courthouse, and this sheriff, a white racist sheriff, he kept talking to him, and he wouldn't stop talking, so he knocked him down, hit him in the mouth, knocked a tooth out, I believe. And he got right back up, and he started kept talking, and then they quickly beat him up and took him to jail. Well, that little blurb, like maybe a half a minute, showed in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm sitting there, and I said, what was that? And they never showed. I looked the next night, and I didn't see it, and I never saw it again. So I was about to graduate from high school, so I forgot all about that. And then some 20 years later, I was watching Eyes on the Prize, and I saw that little scene again. And I recognized it, and I said, that's that man I saw when I was 17. And I got his name. It was Reverend Vivian. So I knew it then. And then 20 more years later passed by, and I was invited as one of the 25 teachers, guests of the U.S. Park Services, to be guests at the 40th anniversary of the March on Selma to Montgomery. And the next day, I was in the National Voting Rights Museum in Selma, and he walked in the door. So I introduced myself to him and told him how long I had known him, and I was glad to meet him finally. And then I asked him, I said, somebody needs to write a book about you. And so he graciously told me, when you get back to Atlanta, call me and come on over and we'll talk about it. So as I was researching him, starting and writing this book, I saw so many other names and so many other support people for to Martin Luther King. So I said, well, I need to make a series out of this.
Yes.
So that's how the series got
And so
started.
it's going to be a series of 16?
No, 21.
21 books.
21, yes.
Oh my goodness, wonderful. And we'll get into who those others are in a few moments. But can you tell us something really significant about Reverend Vivian?
Sure. Lots of people think that the 1960s were the first sit-ins at lunch counters. In 1947, Reverend Vivian integrated the lunch counters in Peoria, Illinois. He started Upward
He
Bound.
did.
Yes,
we
he
have
did.
that here. I know
Yes.
so many young people who went. So many of my students, they left high school and went to Upward Bound. You know, they were in that program.
And he'll be 89 next month. And he is now back at SCLC as the president.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Is
He's
that
there.
amazing?
Yes.
So now we have, and a lot of us have heard of Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth.
Yes. Who died to be 2 years in October. And I had the opportunity to meet him the year before I met Reverend Vivian. I was at a National Endowment for the Humanities workshop in Birmingham, and he was the guest. And this is how naive I was. We had to write a essay in order to be accepted into this program for the summer. And they selected 50 teachers for each session across the country. So when you got there, everybody was from a different state, so you didn't know who it was, who your roommate was. So and I had written this beautiful essay, so I thought, I was going to teach them all about Martin Luther King, and I was going to do this, and I was going to teach it. And all I can say is that Mrs. Boyer, the lady that was in charge and director of the program, she must have said, this child needs help. Let's have her in here. I got there, and they said, hurry up and get dressed. Our keynote speaker will be here. And when I got there, I leaned over and I said, who is he? It was Reverend Shuttlesworth. I had never heard of him. And I wrote all this. And then when he opened it, within 10 minutes, I was so embarrassed that I had never heard of him, that I didn't know that he laid the foundation for Birmingham. He did so many things. He was there like 8 years before the Birmingham campaign. He tried to integrate schools. He was arrested. He was beaten. His wife was stabbed. I mean, all kinds of things. And I'm friends with his children now, who are my age, and a couple of them are older. We speak almost 3 times a week, the second daughter and I.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And she tells that at 11 years old, that was the first time that their home was bombed. And they basically lost their childhood after that, because they had to be transported everywhere. They couldn't go outside to play. They basically lost their childhood because they had to be guarded at all times because their family was threatened so many times.
Wow.
And I tell children, I spoke to some children yesterday, and I asked them, I said, how would you feel? You're 11 years old. You're 11? He says, almost 11. I said, if you couldn't go outside and play, you couldn't do this, because it sinks in when they hear that they can't do things.
Their freedoms are gone.
Yeah.
And, the gravity of what these people did and the sacrifices. And we see so many people just sit down on it now. They just sit down. They don't want to do anything. But then we have, especially in Detroit, we have a community of activists that try to keep reminding the people that people sacrificed their families and everything for us to have the rights we have.
And speaking of sacrifice, let me tell you this. You mentioned my illustrator, Lameek Wilson.
Yes.
He's just 23. He was my former student when I taught in the high school. One day we were working on this book, and I said, it just happened to hit me. I said, Lameek, are you registered to vote? He said, Miss James, it doesn't matter if I vote. And I mean, my blood boiled, but I kept my calm, and I explained to him why he should vote and everything. And he just listened to me out of respect for me. He didn't get it. I know he didn't get it. So a couple of days later, we were working on a page, and I told him about a page, and I said, this is the president who was the president before you were born. And I need President Kennedy, I need a very disgusted look on his face. Then I need pictures of all these things. And he said, what is this? I said, oh, these are people dragging a little old lady. These are people with putting dogs on them. These are people putting a chokehold on somebody. They're putting the fire hoses on them. He said, why? I said, oh, because they were trying to vote and they wanted to go in stores and sit down. And all of a sudden I saw it clicked. He said, oh, they did all that for us? I said, mm-hmm. He said, I'm so sorry. And I said, why are you sorry? He said, because I said it didn't matter if I voted. Mm-hmm. And now I know it does matter. I'm sorry. I said, you have no reason to be sorry. We are sorry that we didn't teach you the importance of this. So if nothing else, that just clicked with him. And he's 23 and he had never heard of some of these things. So I see it just helping not just children, but young adults and adults. Yeah.
Well, our next book is the Reverend Wyatt T. Walker.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Reverend Walker?
Yes. Hold that book up. Don't move. Everybody sees that picture of Reverend Martin Luther King in the Birmingham jail. That's such a famous picture. No one or hardly anyone knows that Reverend Wyatt T. Walker smuggled a camera into the jail and he took that photograph and got it out of there. But what I learned on Mother's Day when I met him, that he got the camera across the hall to Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King also took a picture of him. I saw that picture. It's not included in the book, but when I redo it, when I reprint it, it's going to be in it. There's a picture of him in the jail.
Oh my goodness.
And I had no idea. Yes. And the letter from the Birmingham jail, it was written, you always hear about how it was written on pieces of toilet paper and pieces of edges of magazines and newspapers. When he got out, Reverend Wyatt T. Walker, when he got out, all the pieces were there. He is the one, they said, he was the only one that could understand Martin Luther King's chicken scratch. I understand he had very bad penmanship. And he is the one who put that letter together in order because he could think, he could get into his head. He put the letter together. And that's why we have the letter from the Birmingham jail now.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? And Reverend Walker, is he still alive?
He's still alive. I met him Mother's Day. Yeah.
Where does he live?
He's in Chester, Virginia.
Well,
Yes.
this is wonderful. And you are marketing these mostly to schools and everything?
Schools and libraries and anybody else who wants to buy them.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Anybody else who wants.
If anybody wants to purchase them, someone who's watching the show, what would they do?
I'm selling them through my website, Jax Publications, JAXPUBLICATIONS, JaxPublications.com. And you can purchase it through there.
Is there an email?
Yes, JaxPublications@gmail.com.
Because these are just tremendous, and you have 18 more to do.
18 more to go. Well, actually,
And-
17 more. The fourth one's with the little meat now.
And who is the fourth one?
The fourth one is Dorothy Cotton, the first lady
Yes, I was
the first
going
lady
to-
that I'm going to write about.
Yes, I'm so happy because so many people only know Rosa Parks.
Yes.
The great late Rosa Parks.
Mhm.
But Dorothy Cotton,
Yes.
she was very, very
Yes, she
pivotal.
was the education director, and her story is really phenomenal also. Yes. She was in charge of the education department. Once a month, she conducted a 5-day workshop in a secret place that they couldn't tell about because it was dangerous. They would have bombed it. They would have done lots of things, killed people there. So it was kind of secret, like an underground society, and they taught them how to register, how to stand up and fight. Some of them didn't even know how to write cursive, and that was a requirement. She taught cursive to them. She taught reading and writing to them, and then they would in turn go back to their community and teach the community.
Wow.
And I never knew that either. I read about her, and I said, "Oh, this is phenomenal." Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, Epictetus said only the educated are free. And the education director is a person to help, who helped blacks get their freedom.
Yes.
Get more. I mean, people think Lincoln freed the slaves and that was all it was. Yeah. Please, the fight continues.
Yes.
The fight does continue. And you have Dr. Dorothy Height on here. Mm-hmm. You have Ralph and Juanita Abernathy. Yes. Mm-hmm. Harry Belafonte. Yes. James Bevel. Now, who was James Bevel? James
Bevel, he was out of Nashville, Tennessee, and he did nonviolent training. He was a minister also. Mm-hmm.
A. Philip Randolph, of course.
He was the one who suggested the March on Washington. Yeah.
And see, we're getting ready to celebrate the 50th anniversary of that. Yeah. And here in Detroit, we're having a march because Dr. Martin Luther King first delivered the I Have a Dream speech right here in Detroit at our march. I mean, gee, it gives me chills, really, and to see the pictures and photos and stuff. And a lot of people don't realize how Dr. King was here so much, visiting with Reverend C.L. Franklin, so many of our historical figures.
And there's one other couple I'd like to tell you about.
Okay.
It's Sullivan and Richie Jean Jackson. I have a friend who is a librarian in a public library, and every year he has what he calls Jubilee of Readers, and he has authors come in and they talk about their books, and then you can purchase them. Well, not last year before last, I was there, and I was sitting there, and I asked the lady next to me, I said, who's the authors today? And she said, oh, that lady said that book, that is. She said, that lady. I said, that little old lady right there? She says, yeah. I said, what did she write? And she said, she wrote a book about a house by the side of the road. And I said, a house by the side of the road? I looked at my girl, I said, you got me out of bed to listen to a house by the side of the road? The little lady got up. She started talking. Her house is in Selma, Alabama, and that is the house where Martin Luther King stayed every time he went to Selma. All the time. She said he never even brought a bag. He got in her husband's pajama drawer and he got his pajamas out of there. He never brought a bag, suitcase in, because he had everything there. And everybody on my list, with the exception of 2 or 3 people, have stayed in her house.
Isn't that amazing?
And I told Miguel, I said, I'm so sorry, I was mad at you. So I went and I talked to her and I asked her, I said, well, you were truly a friend. You and your husband, can I add you to the list? And she said, by all means.
Well, this has been phenomenal. I mean, I am so happy that I got the opportunity to meet you and to highlight you and regale you, because you are a wonderful person. You are a significant person, because anyone who spreads the word, and you are a griot, is just so instrumental and so important to our society, our community, especially now. And once again, how can people purchase these books? Again, we tell the audience.
JaxPublications.com, JaxPublications.com, or JaxPublications@gmail.com. And I also have a number, 404-241-4JAX. That's 4529.
Let's get the straight numbers again.
404-241-4529.
So if you want to reach Jacqueline James, if you even look at this as a teaching tool for your community center, your schools, or anything, please give her a call, because this is a wonderful book. And we all know as educators that you can take from this and do so many other things, have the kids reenact these, write on these and everything. Jacqueline, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And visit Detroit again.
I will.
And visit my show again.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.